Okay, lots to cover today. I want to give some tips and tricks that relate to things that I've been specifically bumping into in terms of workflow. And by way of introduction, that's it. The first thing we want to talk about is color. Now, I have done a proper color model, and so let's pull that up. Okay, and this is a work in progress. So tip number one is have a specific scene that you use as a color model. So I've got a level strip here. I'm using the palette page, which I've modified the room a little bit so that the color model is right here. For this scene, I don't need to load a color model, which I'll get into how to do that in a moment. Darren T has a very good tutorial on using the color model that you should watch if you're wondering about that. Why would you do that? Well, the idea is to be able to do what I've done here, which is you create a scene that has basic poses of your characters with the various color situations that they're going to have. You have a very carefully organized palette, Mel, Tianara, Luca, so each character has a page plus a couple utility pages, basics for doing pencil tests and inking, and sort of a utility page for shadows. That's how I've chosen to do it. You can do whatever you want in terms of organizing. But the idea is that you have a specific Opentoonz scene with a specific Opentoonz palette that's married to that scene. They both have the same name. So this is costuming, Salt and Light. And actually, strike that. Let me rephrase that. When you create your color model, what I recommend is you save your palette specifically. So you hit Save Palette as SL Colors and Costuming. I saved it as SL, meaning Salt and Light, Colors and Costuming. Okay, why would you do that? Now, the big thing that I have learned is that intuitively you would say, if I'm working on another scene and I'm going to color my character, it would be cool if I had a palette that's reused throughout my show, that's consistent across the board. It's always the same one. And this is the important part. If something changes in the palette, say through this scene, which is my color model, it will update elsewhere. Okay, let's see if that works. I've got a color here called Vespar, and I'm going to turn this to a bright red. Okay, and I'm going to save the palette. Now let me check one thing here. Okay, so this is interesting. This is actually really, really critical, and it's the reason I started with this boring topic of colors and palettes first, is because I didn't want to forget this. From this scene, where I created this palette and initially saved it, if I overwrite the palette by making changes to it, great. By default, Opentoonz, when you click Save Palette, it is going to save it over the same palette name. Okay, so in this case I'll overwrite it. But however, what you're going to see here, let me make sure I load up the right scene. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save all. Okay, now I've loaded up a completely different scene, and here I see that the color is wrong. Okay, so what this means for you is that when you're moving palettes around and referencing them in other scenes, you are never really dealing with references. You're not referencing that other palette. What's happened is that palette got loaded into your scene, and essentially always, you should think of it as it always becomes a local copy. Now, can that be useful? Yes, it could be useful if you wanted to make changes that are just going to be in that one scene, and that's that. You save your project, the palette becomes saved with it. Now, that means a couple things. Number one, if you're going to make changes to your master palette, you need to make sure when you reload your scene that you go ahead and reload the color model so that you get the latest version of the palette. I'm going to show you right now how to do that. I'm doing this on the palette page. It's just kind of a room I'm using for inking, so it's not the default that Opentoonz uses. It's slightly modified in order to use the Windows color model window. If I open it independently, obviously same thing. So right mouse click and I'm going to load the color model. So all I'm doing is I'm reloading the one I already had loaded into the scene. But remember, because it was loaded into the scene earlier, what's in this scene is a local copy of the palette. Offline changes to the master do not propagate. You need to reload it and then tell it yes. Overwrite the palette, and now you see the bright red color that I did. Okay, so now we've got the right color scheme. The advantage of using a color model, one of the advantages, and again Darren T covers this in his video, is that you can actually you've effectively loaded a separate Toonz level in this little window, and you can actually toggle through it. And you could in fact use the image itself as a color reference. So in other words, I could fill, let's just say for example, let's take the fill tool here, and I want to be on this. Okay. And okay, sorry, I can't fill it because it's been modified by the plastic tool, so I need to grab it through the level strip. Alright, I hit the F key to fill. I'm going to do normal areas, and there, sorry, you grabbed the wrong color. Okay, okay. Now you see what I'm talking about. The proper, see, this is another bit of nuance that I kind of neglected to realize, and now I'm realizing it. Okay, your color model is on a per level basis. What does that mean? That means if this is the level I'm working on, I need to load the color model to that level. Boom. Now this level has the correct color model. You'll see if you watch this. Yeah, see, now that's got its own palette. And so let's go to Vespar, and that looks good. But again, if I want to do some painting here, I need to actually be in the level strip, only because this particular image has been modified by the plastic tool. Once you apply a plastic tool mesh to a frame or a level, you can't continue to paint in the X sheet. It's just a little detail that affects this particular scene. Okay, so now I can go through here, and I want to make one change real quick, which is I've got my default ink color, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to color the lines. I'm using freehand mode. Boom. Okay, so now we've colored all the lines, with the exception that these lines in between are supposed to be like a border. So I have a little bit of a glitch here in that I need to color the lines here, okay, in order to hide that outline. So I'm doing the same thing to the skin. Okay, and now we'll go into normal mode, and let's just do a really quick coloring job here. I said normal mode, areas. We're filling in areas now, not lines. Okay, and we want to use, I guess we'll use this color for his leather, and so we'll change this to Vespar leather, and then we'll make this one Vespar leather highlight. Okay, so now I'm going ahead and demonstrating this in real time because you're going to see how it can showing you the process you're going to want to go through. Okay, so now I want to make a modification of the leather color for the highlight, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the R key to sample that color, and then I'm going to go ahead. Okay, and actually this is problematic. Let me check this. Okay, I'm not sure I'm buying what I'm seeing here in terms of color, but it might be an optical illusion. So okay, so there's our leather color, and then for this highlight color I'm going to go R key, grab this, and then go ahead and fill these two areas that are going to be the highlight, and then go ahead and lighten them up. Okay. Okay, so now my character is colored, and if I go back here, everything looks fine. Alright, now I'm going to save all. Okay, so now this is critical too. I am not sure what destruction was wrought just now, so I want to really qualify what I'm saying today. I don't want this to turn into a rant, but I want to just say this. Opentoonz, if you look at how you manage palettes, colors, levels, how they all work together in the way that you would always need to work with them if you're doing more than a pitifully trivial project. Okay? That's your scenario. Complicated project. I'm just going to say it here and now one time. When it comes to data management, levels, palettes, how everything stays coordinated together, yada, 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 at a level of professional work, not creating toy animation. Opentoonz often fails spectacularly, meaning that little message that I just got probably means, it's not a guarantee and we'll see in a moment, but it probably means that this scene is corrupted and destroyed, and if I try to reload it, nothing will open. It'll just show a blank scene. Okay? Not saying that's going to happen. I will tell you it has happened already today. I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was I'm just working and I changed some colors. Boom. A scene was totally destroyed. So, word of warning. Opentoonz is a wonderful, wonderful application. Once you go beyond playing, and by the way, you can have a very complicated project that amounts to playing, meaning you keep all your work broken up into very small individual scenes. That's probably a good policy. I haven't done that here. I'm thinking about adjustments I can make to move more in that direction. The main problem I have is that in all the scenes for the show, I am referencing this storyboard. And I'm doing quite a bit of work updating colors and whatnot in the original storyboard, which is almost 800 cells long. Okay? Well, that Toonz raster level is a half a gigabyte. Well, it's not punitively large, but it's a large file. Okay? Once you get into, once it starts getting a little complex, and in other words, the minute it becomes really important that Opentoonz be great at data management, it isn't. You have been warned. Okay, moving on. Save palette as. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually update the source palette. Alright, now let's just go back and double check to see if anything's gotten destroyed. I'll hit save all, that's fine. See, okay, so now this is interesting. Once I saved the palette and gave it the original name, because remember I had loaded that palette from the master color model, and then I made a change to it. Boom, Opentoonz blew an error. Once I proactively saved the palette back to the same name. So I've updated the master now, and you'll see here that indeed I have updated the master. Well, I didn't make any changes. I can't remember. I guess the leather is what I did. So you can see it did update, because these leather colors I don't believe were in there before I did this. Once I managed the data by saving the palette, boom, it saved, and I didn't get the error. If you notice, I did save all and I didn't get the error. So that's good news. So this is part of the process, is I'm slowly learning what you can depend on Opentoonz for and what you can't. The basic rule is don't depend on it too much. Make sure that you're getting real specific about what you're saving and where you're saving it and all that sort of thing. I think that because it didn't blow the error, when I reload this, I should be okay. And indeed I am. Okay. The problem is that obviously this is botched to smithereens, and it looks like the leather is toast. Okay, so now this is interesting. This is quite interesting, I think, because it's strange. What it did was it saved my modified version of the color model, but yet when you save the scene file, what it looks like is it went ahead and kept its local version of the palette in the condition that it was before I changed it, which is very, very, very weird. But I think it'll be solved immediately by just loading the color model. Okay, in terms of the colors, that's true. In the palette. In terms of the colors in my shot, no, it's boogered. Okay, so let's go here and let's just fix that. Okay. Okay, and in the level, again, we need to specifically load the color model into the level. And look, it's healed. Everything's healed. Okay, so you kind of see what's going on here. You got to take a couple extra steps. And I'm going to save all again, and it did not blow an error, so that's good. That means if I reload this, everything's going to be fine. Everything is not fine. Okay. Okay, so this is bad. This is very, very, very bad. Because what this means is that Opentoonz can't get its story straight. So I think it's the same situation where the local copy that's being stored in the scene file, because remember, the Toonz raster levels are separate files. Okay, so what seems to be going on here is that the link between the Toonz raster level, which is a separate file from the scene, is not keeping its link to the palette. Well, if you go save all, theoretically, Opentoonz saves everything, including your levels. However, this is a level that is used throughout many, many shots. Many, many scenes. I think the key to what I'm dealing with here is I need to explicitly resave the level. So I'm going to grab this level right here. Actually, I got to be really careful here. Reason being that this level, we got to make a distinction between. We have to make a distinction between a level and what is exposed in the X sheet. What's exposed in the X sheet is, in this case, is one image from a level that has 800 images in it. Almost 800. If I specifically save the level, so I'm going to hit Alt-S. Boom. You saw a little blink. The level updated. I think that did the trick. I think. I've attached the color model to the level explicitly, and I've saved the level. Now, if I reload the scene and the color's still botched, it's not. See, that's what I thought. So you want to get real specific about saving your palettes and saving your levels. If you're going to use stuff throughout a project that's being referenced repeatedly in different scenes. You want to know what the master is, and here's the key. If you change the master, make sure you save the specific file, and any scenes that reference it, you need to reload them, okay? Took 20 minutes to explain that, but it's a big ass deal. Because you're going to be really wondering why the heck you just loaded your scene and all the colors are botched to smithereens. Well, it's actually, I won't criticize Opentoonz on this particular point. I don't think its methodology is bad. The idea of having that you can have a master reference, but yet it can be customized locally is actually a really useful capability. I would prefer if I get to choose. Okay, so for me, if I'm referencing an external file in my Opentoonz scene, I want to always load the latest version of that file when I load my scene. I don't want a local version of the data associated with that referenced file to take precedence unless I specifically say to do that. That's something Blender's very good at. When you create a link to an external resource, it's always going to use that external link unless you specifically tell it to make a local copy. So enough about colors, I would say. I think we've covered it, and hopefully if you want to take a step back from this sort of real-time adventure we're dealing with, my suggestion would be to go to Darren T's YouTube channel and search for the video on the color model, because it really goes through the basics and gets you started. I think for most people, most of the time, doing most of their work in Opentoonz, this is overkill. It's really only useful if you're going to be using some key resources like a color model, like a palette, across a very large and complex project. Okay, enough said. Now the other thing I wanted to cover on this particular video, and I'm going to make a note that it starts at 22 minutes, so if I think about it, I'll put a note in the YouTube video notes. But let's talk about fire. What I did here was I just wanted to show how I did it. It's real simple, actually. What I did was on threes, I simply just kept redrawing the fire, okay, or the smoke, I should say. So you get this effect. But if you wanted to do this yourself, this is what I would recommend. This is how I'd recommend doing it. And I'm actually going to go do it. I'm going to do it over here in Krita just because it'll be faster to demonstrate. So I'm going to go boom, boom, get rid of that, and let's insert a keyframe. So you could do this quite easily in Opentoonz. But okay, so the idea is that here is a fire situation, okay? Okay, so here's your fire, and then the question is, what about the smoke? Okay, so this is what I found. What I found was, in Opentoonz, essentially if I did like this, okay, and then I hit Control Insert. Okay, what I would do is I would jump forward 3 frames, and then here are the key steps. I would use the Select tool, which in Opentoonz is S, and I would take the smoke that was already there and move it up a little bit. Okay, and with the selection tool, you could actually it would be more like what you'd see here. The selection tool in Opentoonz kind of works like this. If you hit Control, you can move the individual edges. Okay, so I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. But what I did was I moved it up a little bit, and then I drew a little bit more smoke. Then I went forward 3 frames and did the same thing. I grab it, move it up a little bit, and then again add this little bit of smoke down here. Okay, so then obviously you want it partially transparent, and I'm just going to show how that looks here. And then the idea is you can then go back over it and maybe just morph and distort it a little bit by mushing things around with your brushes, just to sort of just kind of sell the effect. So at 8 frames a second, that's what you get. You certainly could, I mean, it wouldn't be ridiculous to maybe put a blur on it, you know, but hey, it's the aesthetic of an anime, and I kind of felt like I got what I was looking for. Okay, so let's go back up to 24 frames a second here. No, not 27, 24. Okay, so that's that. Okay, another point, and I'll show a couple more extreme examples of this, but what are we going to do here? This is going to be at 26 minutes. We're going to talk about the plastic tool. One of the reasons why I'm using the, I'm kind of building on the original storyboard, is that if you actually go through, and you can see the colors are botched here because these shots need to have the palette reloaded. So that's fine. You can see that we're going from sketches to final art within the storyboard. Okay. So this is the shot I'm working on right now, and what I'm wanting to do is, if possible, add whatever animation I need without necessarily having to draw a bunch of new frames. So in this case, very, very quickly, I'll just show that I use the plastic tool to just add a little deformation of the guy's legs, and we're in build skeleton mode, not animate. Sorry about that. Okay, so you just see this little bend of the legs, and there you go. That's it. Okay, file, save all. Okay, let's show another two more actually fairly extreme examples of how we can use the plastic tool to bake more animation than you might expect into a single frame. So I think I'm going to go with this one. Okay, so here's the shot. Again, this is kind of towards the end of the show. Boom. Everybody's throwing in together, and you got Monkey's hand. Okay, let me show how I did that. There's the drawing. So I just went ahead and inked everybody. Well, it turns out with the plastic tool, if you boom. Okay, so what you can do is take your drawing and create the plastic tool mesh, and it's going to create the mesh around each of these pieces. But because the pieces do not touch each other, you can set up a bone system that puts each item on its own controller, if you will. Okay, I'm going to turn keep distance off. So that means that you can do this sort of thing. And I always add 2 bones to any given appendage so that you do have the ability to rotate or move around. In the case of Monkey, I didn't really need to, but here you see with Luca, you can move it this way, and I needed to be able to fine-tune in this direction a little bit. Okay? So that worked out pretty well. Let's look at one final example, which is kind of taking it to probably ridiculous extremes. I'm going to discard the changes on this particular level, but let's look at this level. This is where Tianara has resolved to throw in with these guys, and there's a few things we're going to look at, not just the plastic tool. I'm going to also show how I found a pretty cool way to get a better final look on my render. Okay, so this is a subtle shot. There's a little bit of a camera move. Let's go ahead and look at the camera point of view. So we're pushing in a little bit, and then she just smiles. Okay, so the question for me was, well, how do I take this single frame from my from my storyboard and actually include multiple frames of animation in this one frame. Here's it was actually really simple. I just went to the drawing, I took the selection tool and drew a lasso around different pieces. So each of these pieces, the eyebrows and the eyes, and then once I had selected them, I went ahead and made like a modification like this, just stretched them a little bit. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. Then I did the same thing I did before, which was just activate the plastic tool. So that what actually happens is, we'll show you out here. Let's go to this view. Okay, so I've got bones on each of those little pieces that are pre-deformed. I use the selection tool to actually squish her eyes a little bit and bend and move her eyebrows position a little bit. And so then I just took the plastic tool and took these pieces, which initially were like right here, and just stretched them out here so they're off screen. Alright, so let's go to the basics view. It's a little easier to work the X sheet. So then what we do is between here and here, boom, create a new keyframe. And now let's hide that and look at what that actually does to the look. Look at that. Instant smile. Combine that with a slight push in with the camera, and I was pretty satisfied with how that turned out. Now, at 31, I was looking at another anime, looking at the quality of their final render, and I was liking what I was seeing. Well, let's look at this at full size. If you look really closely, I don't know if you can see this, but you see that? You see that noise? I wanted to get a little bit of that look that you get when you actually have cameras that are shooting the individual cells. It's a little bit of an old school kind of look. And I thought it came out quite nice. Here's how I did it. First of all, let's go here. I actually did this in Krita. Okay, so there's actually two steps. Step number one, generate random noise. Okay. 3 steps, I should say. Then what I did was a hue saturation adjustment, and I turned the lightness down to, I believe, negative 50%. Okay, I just wanted to have it on the dark side so that I had the option to use multiply or overlay, or not even use it as a post-production blending mode, but just overlay it over my scene. Would it still work if it was partially transparent? That type of thing. Wanted to figure that out. So I basically created this. Then, this is actually a really key step. Blur it, and I think 2 or 3 times. 2 or 3 times we blur it. Alright? So now I'm going to go back to what I had before. Looks like maybe I had it slightly lighter and slightly less blurred. The blurring's important. Okay? So you got basically film grain, and it's blurred, and so if we hit F3 here, you can see the way we did this is, number one, the entire X sheet, everything in the shot is blurred. How much is it blurred? 2 pixels. Okay? So let's go back here and let's see how much of a difference that really makes. Okay? Here is unblurred. Here is blurred. Nice. It makes a huge difference in the overall It just softened things up really, really nicely. Okay, so F3 again. And then column 5, which is my noise, is combined in overlay mode. So you're saying, well, how do you do that, Dave? You right mouse click on the connection, you go insert effects, and what I did was layer blending, INO overlay. Okay? Your noise texture is the foreground because it's being overlaid over top of your overall show, all your other levels. So all your other levels are your background. Foreground, background, there you go. And 20%, 0.2. Okay? When you do all of the above, okay, so I want to make the point that it would not be totally ridiculous to use the noise without a post-production render effect. It's not horrible. It's not great, but it's not horrible. Now, I have it set here to an opacity level of 20% here in the view, which when you render, that's really not going to work. So you would have to make the actual image from Krita 20% opaque, like a ping that's 80% transparent, and that is what you would overlay. If you did it that way, then you could get the effect and you would not actually have to have the computational expense of a post-production effect. My sense is that probably we're going to want to use the post-production effect, and I need to go to Darren T's YouTube channel and bone up on using the Opentoonz render farm too, so that when these shots are done, I can shoot them off to one of my other machines and have it rendered elsewhere. So, again, you see what happens if you turn this off. Turn it on. That's pretty nice. Gives a real nice effect that I'm going to be finding myself using a lot. Okay, that's that. So you want to do a 2-pixel blur on your whole shot and then a noise overlay at about 20%. However you're going to do it. You could do the same thing in Krita. In fact, I initially tested the idea in Krita just to see if I could get the look, and then it's pretty easy to translate those ideas over into Opentoonz. So I think that's it. That recaps kind of the stuff that's been going on. The whole color palette thing is seriously a nightmarishly, you want to make sure you really kind of know what you're doing. So that's it. As you know, there will be more later.